So it turns out I have a problem. Now, this is a problem that I'm sure every single person watching has hit at some point in their lives, and that is you bought too much of something and you have nowhere to put it. So maybe too many seeds, too many starts, too much blah, blah, blah. In this case, it's garlic, and garlic to me is so important. The problem is I probably bought, oh man, something like 10 pounds of garlic seed, which is a lot, probably equivalent of 600 heads if I had to guess. And the other problem is that I don't have any more space for garlic. This bed here is already fully planted out with my hardnecks. I have a small soft neck bed in the other garden, but between those two, it's probably only like 200 heads of garlic, and I need 400 at least. When a recipe says 1 to 2 cloves, I usually put a whole head. So I have garlic problems in many different ways, but first we need to find space to actually plant all this garlic in, and to do that, we're going to actually reopen an area of my garden that I haven't used in a long time. And we're going to do it entirely using just this old potato fork that I bought at a thrift sale. So let's go pop over to the front yard and make some space. So we are now in the front yard and we are looking at this particular spot to grow the garlic in. This is my front yard that's facing the street. And so I don't really like hanging out here too much, but something like garlic is a slow, long grower. I could put it out here, basically set it and forget it. So if you've watched my channel for a while, you've probably seen this bed in some shape or form before. I grew corn here before, I've had sunflowers here before, and even grew garlic here once before. But as we went into summer this year, I actually decided not to use this bed at all. And the reason why is because of all the water restrictions and the lack of water. So I've let this entirely dry out. This is now essentially dead soil. Even after the rains, it's still bone dry. So that's why we grabbed this tool here. We're going to use this potato fork to sort of rough up the surface, and we're going to re-amend and plant this out entirely with garlic. Just to set the stage, this is probably going to be a 2-day, actually for sure it's going to be a 2-day process, because today we're going to be working on the soil, but then overnight we're going to let it rehydrate, and tomorrow we'll plant it out. So currently as it stands, all I really have here is this old cocoa core chunk sort of mulch and some compost that I spread in the last year. So previously I also had 3 artichokes over there, which I don't think are alive anymore, even though they're perennial, because I haven't watered this in literally a year. So I would be shocked if anything was still alive, except for that yarrow, which is definitely hanging in. So what we're gonna do with this potato fork right now is loosen up the surface of the soil as much as we can. What we're trying to do is create as much surface area as we can possibly get, so that when I turn on the sprinkler here, as much of that water will actually sink into the earth instead of just flowing off the surface. So that was a nice little workout. I love doing tasks like this in the garden because they just, fulfill that need for exercise that everyone has. And this simple little potato fork just did a number on this bed. All I did is basically till essentially the top, maybe 4 to 6 inches of soil here. And let me just say this really quickly is I love the low till methods or no till, and I employ it throughout my garden very successfully. But when you have an area that's this dry, throwing compost on top and trying to water it in is just not gonna work. You're gonna end up with a hydrophobic layer. It's gonna cause all sorts of nasty problems that are gonna be really frustrating to figure out for a long time. So what's the solution? Well, the solution in this case is that I'm just tilling that top layer. And by using something like this, I'm not even really tilling, I'm sort of just breaking it up and dragging the pieces up. Every time I swung this, what I did is I impacted and then I pulled it towards me. So I'm not really necessarily homogenizing everything, I'm more like overturning that top layer. So here's a close-up of the area that we just worked over with the potato fork, and I'm going to bring it down low, and you can see just how much topography I've created here. There's all these ridges, hills, and little valleys, and what that's going to allow is to give the water somewhere to pull up. If you didn't do this and you sprayed it with water, it's going to be hydrophobic and repel the water, and all that water is just going to run off into these plants here. So by doing this, we've created all these little wells, and that'll let the water infiltrate slowly into the pore space below, and it's just going to make life so much easier. To accomplish this, we're going to use this little sprinkler setup from HoseLink. It has all these different patterns, and I really like the center one here. So I'm going to just attach it to the hose, and I'll let it rip and show you exactly what that looks like. The water has now been on for 30 minutes, so let's take a quick look over here to see if it's actually working. You can see by that dust that it is indeed still dry, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I said that it takes a lot of water to actually get something wet once it's been fully dry like this. And the nice thing is, at least we don't see many major pools, like no major pools of water forming, which means that the water is actually soaking into the earth, which is exactly what we want. I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll see if the soil actually got wet, and then we can get ready for some garlic planting. Welcome back. It is day 2 of our rehabbing this bed, and the sprinkler has now run for about 3 hours in total. So let's take a closer look at some of the soil here, see how we're doing. And it looks like in general, it has begun to get wet all the way through. So I think at this stage, given the fact that I'm going to be putting irrigation here anyway, this is wet enough to get started. So I think we can move on to the next step of rehabbing this bed. Now we have the watering done for now, and we could actually focus on amending and building this bed out properly for garlic. So I'm gonna go grab some amendments and a wheelbarrow or 2 of compost, and we'll start shaping this up. One of the mistakes I made previously when I planted garlic out of my garden in that garlic planting video was that I set up the bed entirely and then planted garlic, where in reality what I should be doing is actually building out furrows for the garlic and then covering it with compost. That way I don't have to dibble through a bunch of compost and soil. I could just lay my garlic down and bury it in compost, and that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a couple furrows here. I'm gonna just be really rough with this. I'm not gonna be exact on this bed at all. I'm basically gonna do this as an experiment to see how little I could get away with in terms of measuring and prepping. I'm usually a little bit over the top on that. So in this case, I'm just gonna go ahead and try to pull a few rows that are, I don't know, maybe 6 inches apart, hopefully closer to 8. We'll see what happens. In terms of amending the soil, I'm going to go with the Espoma Biotone Starter. This is a great fertilizer for an area of your garden that's maybe neglected or has been left to die. It has a little bit more of those beneficials that'll help populate your soil and help build great soil. So in this case, since I abandoned this whole garden for basically a year, I want to make sure that I give it everything that I can to ensure its success. Now, you don't want to just blindly add fertilizer, but in this case, I know that I've never added any fertilizer to this bed since I've been growing in it. But after we get the garlic in, we'll go ahead and cover it all with some compost. And between the Espoma Biotone and the compost, we should be really well covered for a really fantastic garlic crop. Here's a view of the furrows as it stands. So I think I got about 6 of these guys with the fertilizer in it. So now let's go ahead and crack some garlic. First, I'll address the fact that I've been walking on this bed. I'm not that worried about it, honestly, since I'm doing this as a low-till style, and I'm going to have garlic in here for 6 months. I'm not that worried that it's going to have a problem dealing with any minor compaction over that time period. But with that being said, let's get into the garlic varieties. This is from Burns Blossom Farm. I actually followed them on Instagram, which is how I saw that they were selling this garlic. And it got me really excited because they listed this as their desert island garlic. Now, I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Aglio Rosso garlic seed. I'm only 1% Italian, so, don't blame me. But let's get into actually breaking this out. This particular garlic was actually described as being their favorite in terms of flavor. And I'm all about bringing the flavor. That's what I'm going for. If I'm growing something, it's because I want it to be really delicious. The other reason why I decided to go with these guys in particular is they're actually in California. So far, I don't think I've ever planted garlic with seed that was produced in California. So I'm hoping that will give me a little bit of an advantage here because it'll be more similar to my climate. They're up in Chico. Obviously it gets a little colder there, but I think it's still going to be better than something, say, grown in Washington or Idaho, anything like that. So man, it's really a beautiful garlic. I could see why it's called Rosso because it has this really nice reddish hue to it. Let me bring you in a little closer to see that. So there's a little close-up shot of these guys. I'll probably end up planting everything but these small ones here. These I will set aside and probably eat them for dinner tonight. I'm only going to plant the best of the best since I have a limited amount of space left. I'm actually going to go ahead and put all these tiny cloves in my back pocket, so hopefully I remember that before I throw these in the wash. But this is kind of to prove to me that maybe I don't need to overthink everything so much. I'm just making some trenches in the ground, and I'm just popping some cloves right into the ground, and that's it. I'm not doing anything special. I'm not dibbling them. I'm not pre-soaking or anything like that. I'm just going to keep it very raw here, keep it very basic, and just see if maybe I'm just wasting my time by doing all the other stuff. Of course, I can't get a true comparison because I don't have a control, but either way, if I get a great garlic crop out of this, I'm probably not going to bother with all those extra steps that I usually do. So I'm going to go ahead and plant this row out, and then we'll get to the next variety. I gotta say, so far I'm really impressed by the quality of this garlic. I haven't seen any disease or anything like that. Every single clove is really nice and plump and firm. Doesn't feel like it's been sitting for too long. So I'm actually really excited for this now. Not just for the flavor, but because of how healthy this garlic looks. The next variety up is called Blossom. Now I believe Blossom, if I remember correctly, is a turban style garlic. I might be wrong, but that is the type of garlic that generally will produce a lot faster. It has a shorter days to maturity. So in this case, these cloves are all looking really good. And actually they're starting to sprout a little bit, so that's perfect. Let's go ahead and get these in the ground. This might be too loose of an experiment to call it an experiment, but I am interested in doing more of these kind of experiments where I really try to think about why I'm doing something and whether it's worth doing it a certain way or another. So in this case, I'm testing whether the spacing really matters, whether all the preparation really matters. But I would like to do more of these experiments in the future. So if you guys can think of anything you guys want me to test, or if you guys just want to see that more in general, just go ahead and drop it in the comments and I'll try to make that a focus to capture more actual experiments rather than this kind of loose higgledy-piggledy experiment. Put these guys in the other pocket so I know which one tastes like what. Actually, let me bring you in a little closer here just to show you. This is the sprouting side of the garlic here, so it's already growing. That's totally fine to plant, and it actually just means that you know this garlic is going to grow. Now, the thing to consider though is that when you put this in the ground, you gotta be really careful not to break this in any stage, because if this breaks, it's probably not gonna grow any garlic. So I'm gonna go ahead and plant that anyway, but I'm gonna just try to be really careful about it. So this is the last variety that we're planting today. This is called Georgian Fire. Now, when it says Georgian, it's not talking about the state, Georgia. It's actually referring to the country. And there's actually quite a bit of garlic varieties from Georgia. They tend to have a really strong flavor. They also tend to be very beautiful garlics. So let's take a look at this guy. So first of all, this is a hard neck. It's got a very stiff center part here. I'll go ahead and crack that out. And the cloves aren't actually anything particularly interesting, but we're gonna plant 2 rows of this because I have a friend from Georgia. I wanna give him a little surprise gift in the spring. Now we have the 6 rows of garlic planted out, and I'm going to go through and start burying it from the hillsides that we kind of dug up to make these furrows. So what I mean is I'm just gonna come by and sort of push the soil together everywhere where I dig it up to give it that first initial burying. And then we're gonna come through after and bury it entirely in compost. I have to admit, that felt pretty weird. I feel like I definitely didn't plant it deep enough, but we'll see. This is the experiment. As I mentioned, the only thing left to do here is now bury all this garlic. So this is a nice finished compost. I'm gonna go ahead and probably do 2, maybe 3 wheelbarrows, and then I'll come back with some mulch, but we'll do the irrigation in a future video when I finally work on the full irrigation for my homestead. Till then, I'll see you guys next time.